different cities approach the infrastructure challenge in very different ways, and I think it's very important to keep in mind that there are some cities who have quite a legacy of infrastructure investment historically, where the challenge for them is renewing, updating, renovating existing infrastructure to make sure that it is delivering for the needs of what can be quite a shifting demographic and economic basis for a city. We see, for example, cities in the Rust Belt of the United States, like Detroit, for example, where they've had a large legacy of quite substantial infrastructure that went through a long period of population decline, coupled with lack of investment in keeping the infrastructure current. This has a real impact for cities like this because it leads to much higher operating costs, and this is something that cities need to keep in mind. On the other types of developing cities, on the contrary, are often needing to make bold investment decisions in infrastructure to make sure that they're able to keep up with the demands of a growing population, often an increased middle class, which demands different sort of infrastructure and improvement of basic infrastructure. And so there are examples where there are some of these cities that are going through quite some growth. And if you look at the cities in China, some are very high-profile examples where the Chinese government has made incredible investments in starting what are essentially brand new cities with bold infrastructure, the sort of idea of build it and they will come sort of development. On the flip side, of course, you've got cities that are developing now, and I would call that a city like Rio de Janeiro, where there is a long-standing infrastructure in place, but there has been not a lot of investment over time, and now the city is having to catch up and put in a lot of basic infrastructure, and the spending there has been very low. Then there are the big cities, the big global cities, where actually we find that a New York, a Boston, a London is really looking at infrastructure now from a sustainability perspective and putting in investments there, but always having to deal with high population flows in support of the infrastructure. I think these different types of cities and the investments that people are making, and mayors in particular are making, leads to some challenges for cities, which is, how do you effectively make these investments? One of the classic challenges is that these investments have high capital costs at the starting point, and not necessarily an obvious return on that investment. Pricing of these infrastructure assets has always been a challenge. And if you look at some of the investments that have been made in cities in the US recently, quite high-profile infrastructure projects as part of the sort of stimulus. You look at a city like Buffalo that put in a bold light rail through the town without really a clear understanding of the demand patterns. And you would actually see now that the fare box recovery, and when I say fare box recovery, I mean the amount of money you actually receive from passengers who are using this, only covers about 5% of the operating cost. If you'd actually had a view on the cost to get a person from A to B, you probably would have gone for a different type of investment. And I think getting that realistic sense will lead to some of these different decisions. And the takeaway is that not all cities are getting this set of investment decisions right, and that from a city government perspective, having a clear sense of what the demands are for the different asset classes is absolutely essential.